Hi everyone, The Lone Wolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. And we actually have some small tidbits of news that could be interesting that pretty much just dropped or that I just noticed. First of all, we are having a mass test next week on Tuesday. The focus should be on the warp tunnel animation where we had done one before. You could actually see your ship take the warp tunnel through a gate jump. That never made it to TQ, but looks like they're going to test that again, so I look forward to that. Also a tweet from CCP Carker. She's apparently trying to get an extra tab in the market window for your transaction histories. That could be very, very cool, very interesting for EVE Talk as well. And then of course we know that it is May and we should expect the release to come on the 26th, where the structures will be destroyable, at least the offline structures or the abandoned structures will be destroyable in a single go. And well, with that or right after that, we should also see the beginning of the Eclipse part of the storyline with the Triglavians. I really am curious to see how that will develop, and putting those two together, potentially if CCP goes overboard a little bit again with the NPC invasions, they could actually take down structures all by themselves if those have been abandoned. That could be very interesting. As always, we'll take a quick look at the New Eden store and let's see if there's anything new or on sale to report. So we still have those Dragon Phoenix skins. I do think they look absolutely amazing, that are marked as new, but I'm not seeing any sales or anything like that happening. I hope everyone is having good luck with the current event sites, of course, because there are skins that drop from there as well, but nothing too new to report, so we can move straight to the market. We are going to start with some plex and stuff, and that's coming in at 2 minutes 5 seconds. Like that. And here we go. Since I made the ticker, actually took a little bit of time between that to do some grocery shopping. Prices have gone down even more, or I should say some more sell orders have been coming in. I was at 2,642,000 and now we are at 2.6 million for the sellers in GTA 4.4, a bit above 2.4 million as well for the buyers in GTA. That doesn't change much, and then the sellers in the player-owned trade hubs actually are going substantially below 2.6 million. This is again unexpected, but we're seeing continued pressure on plex prices, and the chart is heading for that 2.5 million mark, which we have not seen in a very long time. How low will this go? I have no idea. You can also see that the volumes are up. Perhaps we could also be seeing now the impact of the mobile plex market, so you can actually trade in plex in GTA 4.4 through the app, and that could be why personally I feel like GTA is becoming more competitive with the Tranquility Trade Tower. You quite often do see sellers jump in and try to get those sell prices down towards something that is very competitive, so that they can move these items very quickly. So very interesting. I thought we would stem the bleeding at 2.6, but it looks like we might be heading for 2.5 million for plex. As I've always said, this looks really good to start your investments, but never spend all your ISK in a single go. So I would slowly be buying plex at the moment, honestly. This chart looks kind of crazy. Next up, we have the multiple pilot train certificate that is following suit and is in fact really going down substantially in the last 2 months. Now the trend has really been confirmed, and we're heading for a 1.25 billion price on the multiple pilot train certificate, 1.3 billion for the sellers and 1.2 billion pretty much for the buyers. Pretty nice. The average seems to be right in between them at 1.25, and so you are probably able to buy these multiple pilot train certificates a little bit above 1.2 if you have the patience for it. Of course, what's different with plex is that the volumes are completely down the drain. So all of this here that crashed the price, that was basically a massive sale from CCP. It took a long time for us to get back to that really low volume level, but we're there. All of that has been absorbed, and now the correlation, I think, between plex and the trading certificates is back much more closely following each other, and as a result we have this sharp decline, this correction that was still needed, I think, in the multiple pilot train certificates. Let's move on to our skill extractors that are of course also following that same trend and are now actually going below 300 million on the daily averages. We're talking 308 million for the sellers in GTAT, 304 million for the sellers in the player-owned trade hubs, and then 285 million for the buyers. With average prices sometimes below 300 million, it means that you are buying these for 285 or close to that price from time to time. And here of course the volumes are actually up, I would say, from the average. So that's very impressive on a down price to see higher volumes. On the skill injector fronts, I think the trend will be the same. Here are the large skill injectors. Oh no, this is actually different. This is a serious drop off from 750 million down towards 700 million on the average price. 722 million for the sellers, but 697.9 million for the buyers. They want to get their large skill injectors for less than 700 million ISK. I think part of the explanation here is that like the login events were basically ending, and lots of players of course got a massive boost in SP. All of that is going to work on demand. I don't think lots of people want to spend lots of extra ISK right now to get a large skill injector when CCP just gave them a nice boost for whatever skills they wanted. And combine that with the lower price of plex and you really do get a massive increase in the volatility, in the decrease in price here. Yeah, 700 million ISK. I wonder if you could buy them. I think if you put up a buy order for 700 million, you are actually going to grab one, considering the downtrend that we are in here at the moment. Very impressive, very sharp decline and continued decline here. You can see that about a year ago we were at 1 billion ISK. Complete reversal of the situation, especially for an item and items, I should say, in this category that tend to be hedges against inflation. For the small skill injector, I think now it's almost inevitable that that one is going to follow the price movement a little bit closer, and you can see that we also have an increased volatility on the downtrend here, heading for 150 million, but we are already below that on the sellers. In fact, 149 million for the sellers, 140 million for the buyers of small skill injectors. So a sharp decline across the board pretty much in the plex related items. Daily alpha injectors also under pressure, not really dropping off like the others, but as I've said many times, this is a little bit of a different market, of course. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that the item is purchasable directly from CCP. 32 million for the sellers, 26 million for the buyers. On the 1 year chart, again, this does look very, very cheap. We finally also still have the hypercores. That's all that's left. Yep, and that one is now finally stabilizing below the 300,000 ISK mark. 290 for the sellers and 255 for the buyers. Of course, tied to the Hypernet Relay, yet another small segment, I'm going to say, although I don't have any actual data to confirm that. I don't know if there's lots of activity in the Hypernet Relay, but from the looks of the hypercore prices, well, it's finally stabilizing, so perhaps people are now more willing to try and sell something through the Hypernet Relay than they were, like, let's say 6 months ago or something like that. So generally here, to me, it looks like we are under pressure. It could mean lots of supply, considering the amount of people that are playing EVE Online at the moment. I think that is also the case. Probably also real life related, right? People that would be going out lots, maybe going to concerts and things like that. All that stuff has been cancelled. Where you're going to spend your income on, then that's going to be EVE Online, of course. So good time to be buying. I do think so, for investors that want to look at the longer term. On the other hand, don't go crazy. As I always say, don't put all your eggs in one basket, because yeah, counter to my expectation, plex is still dropping to lower price points. Moving on to the minerals, coming in at 915. Let's take a look at these. Haven't actually taken too close a look in the last week or so at the mineral markets. What I do see is that titanium is still trending lower from its high point of 10 ISK on a couple of days. So here we do see a little bit of a correction, but a slow one. So in GTA itself, people are selling their ISK for 8.3 ISK mostly. Someone is just coming in with 94 million units at 803. Those will probably be gone pretty quickly, considering that the buyers are still at 8 ISK as well. The 1.2 billion is going to, of course, cause a little bit of a problem. And my reading on this is that after the panic, of course, of the announcements from CCP on the resource crunch, it shot the price up to 10 ISK, which was a little bit too much. But what we're also going to start to see here in the last couple of weeks, I would say, in the downtrend, is that players have found their way towards effective mining of titanium, and that supplies are actually increasing to counter that. That's my read on this. Pyrite is staying pretty flat. This is actually really impressive for one of the items that was, in my opinion, massively oversupplied and caused the price to crash down to 4 ISK. Now we're talking 764 for the sellers, 704 for the buyers, doing really well to stay above 7 ISK in my opinion, so not bad for Pyrite. The Mexalon chart is actually going up to a 1-year high point. Potential explanation here, I think that Mexalon may have regained its status as being the #1 bottleneck in 0.0, and if you follow Reddit and the tweets a little bit, you know that there's at least some action happening there as well between the Imperium and like Horde, Pandemic, Legion, things like that. So as a result here, 1-year high point for Mexalon, selling for almost 80 ISK, and buyers are coming in at 73 mostly, but one of them is very aggressive at 76 ISK for the Mexalon, probably expecting the trend to continue and wanting to be sure to grab at least some of them. On the Isogen front, a slow downtrend, and we are now below 20 ISK. That's not good news for Isogen. 20 ISK for the sellers and 19.29 for the buyers. In my opinion, still the one that is struggling the most, because it is still not really needed as much as it can be produced throughout New Eden, and it probably is also the mineral that has the most massive stocks still lying around in player hangars. Then we've got the Noxium market that does seem to be stabilizing. Its new range seems to be 300 to 350 ISK, which it actually started the year at, but you can again see that pressure that was continuing to build on resource availabilities. And then here we have the big change when CCP announced the resource crunch. 336 ISK for the sellers and 332 for the buyers, 330 for most. This is a really narrow margin. Really looks like Noxium is on its price range. For Zydrine and Megasite next, we have a continued trend upwards towards 900 ISK here for Zydrine. 916, man, some stuff must have changed, because oh no, I was actually taking a look at Megasite, if I'm not mistaken. That dropped off a little bit, but yeah, Zydrine selling for 917 ISK. Well, we've not seen that in a whole year. Most of the year was spent at around 500 ISK, almost a doubling of the price. Here I think the moon mining changes are really being felt. Lots of supply for Zydrine and Megasite dropping off, causing this crunch to be here, and the value of the minerals to go up massively. 854 for the first buyer in GTA 4.4 as well. Yeah, not much to say, except Zydrine seems to be the big winner at the moment of the resource crunch, at least a slow burner, right? Lots of speculation on the Tritanium spike, the Noxium spike, Mexalon going up as well. Was already trending that way, but now playing with 1-year high points. Zydrine actually on the announcements was slowly moving up, but now we do see that correction on the moon mining changes, which was actually this jump right here. 920, we haven't seen that in a very long time, and very quickly you see 1000 ISK coming into view for Zydrine sellers. Megasite is also going up, but hesitating at the tail end here. We are talking 600 ISK for the first seller, 618 for most, 562 for the others. It's still a decently good upwards trend at the moment, but considering where we come from, of course, Zydrine is by far the biggest percentage winner here. And then finally, we have our Morphite market that is continuing to stay very expensive, above 17.5k on average. 18,260 for the sellers, 7,500, excuse me, for the buyers. Complete reversal, of course, from the plex situation, where plex and stuff seems to be very cheap, real life related. Right now might be a good time to move in, but always be a little bit careful. On the other hand, if you want to make ISK, well, producing minerals is in high value at the moment. Many of these at 1-year high points, and definitely up substantially for the year. So as much as Plex has gone down, Plex stuff has gone down, minerals have gone up to make up for that. which I think was also part of CCP's goal, of course, make activity in the game valuable, and yeah, looks like they are succeeding. Next up, the PI market, coming in at 15 minutes. 15:00. Let's get started. Here are the broadcast nodes, continuing its trend of meandering around the 2.0 million, but staying just below average on the daily averages for the moment. Less than 2 million for the sellers, less than 1.8 million for the buyers. Obviously really stable, except for this right here, which was, I think, speculation on an announcement around structure, but other structures, with that not being the case, we're basically staying below the 2 million mark. For the construction blocks, we've got a little bit of a pushback, finally back above 10,000 disc on the average prices. First sellers coming in at 10,000 though, so competition to try and dump whatever was produced is very strong, meaning that supply tends to take advantage of these jumps very quickly. 9,600 for the first buyers. That does show maybe a little bit of an increased demand here, willing to go up. So perhaps the first sign of a return to normalcy. For construction blocks, 10,500 to 11,000 would be the average price, and that would be between sellers and buyers. So right now we're still not there. Consumer electronics is trying to show that trend as well, in my opinion. You can see a slight increase in volumes in the last 5 days or so, and a slight pullback or pull up towards 10,000 disc on average. 10,000 for the sellers, 9,400 for the buyers. Again, going up here. That is important information. We're not there yet, right? We would expect, in my opinion, for consumer electronics, we're talking 12,500 in fact, for a normal historic average. So we still have a ways to go, but the first signs of returning demand seem to be here. Coolants is doing a reverse then, perhaps as ISK flows into some other PI materials. It doesn't flow in the fuel related ones because this one is dropping off. Then 11,000 still for the sellers, that's pretty decent, but demand is definitely pretty low. 9,500 for the buyers, going down below 9,000 disc pretty quickly. So we gotta be careful. This is probably part of the explanation for the further drop in fuels, which you can see on the ticker, that is really cheap at the moment as well. Cryo Protectant Solutions is continuing its slow trend back towards that average, but failing to really break through massively on that 150,000, although we're below that. 146,000 for the sellers, 122,000 for the buyers. In my opinion, really normal. Don't really have any implant news or anything like that, but we're still paying that premium because there's lots of demand for those new implants and they still need to be produced, but slowly the market is finding its supply routes, and we are going down on price and cost. Enriched uranium is not doing well, tied to fuels, definitely below average, although 13,750 is maybe a little bit high for a historic average as well. 12,500 to 12,800 for most sellers, 11,600 for the buyers. A little bit of pressure considering it's still a refined PI material. I'm still gonna say that this is not that bad, but again, showing the downtrend on fuels, coming at least partly from PI as well. Integrity response drones, this is a little bit more interesting. We're starting to see daily averages below 2 million ISK. Clearly most of the year we've been at 2.2 to 2.5 million. Sellers are coming in at 2.1 and buyers are below 2 million ISK. So if you want something to invest in when it comes to potential longer term, I'm gonna say then structure announcements, my gamble, my theory or my speculation would be, of course, right now we're in chaos and we're not gonna get that anytime soon, but eventually the Triglavians, I'm expecting them to basically carve out a part of space in New Eden as well. I'm sure that giving the chance to create chaos and to stomp on the status quo for players, lots of them would make that choice. I personally lean towards trying to help the empires, but we'll see. If that happens, we might see a line of Triglavian structures come to the front as well, of course. They should have something like that if they live in abyssal space. So that could be very, very interesting. But this is really long-term gambling that you're doing. On the other hand, 1 year low point, less than 2 million for integrity response drones. Look at this full chart, it's not that bad. and the keep start just blew up. Mechanical parts are staying above 10,000 disc, or at least trying to. 10,400 for the sellers, 9,755 for the buyers. Obviously also below average, but still doing decently well. Organic border applicators also struggling, but bouncing off of a 1-year low point of 900,000 ISK. Right now sellers are coming in at less than a million, still 958 for the buyers. And you can see that I'm not the only one that is keeping an eye on this. Some of them, we went down to 915,000 for the buyers, and here you can see some people are saying, you know what, I'm at least gonna buy 100 of these, try and be ready, because this is a little bit ridiculous. I want to be sure that I grab it. All right, below 960,000 is still a really good price for these organic mortar applicators, and so that speculative demand does rear its head on 1-year low points. Robotics back on the struggling path now, well below 85,000 on the chart. 87,000 for the sellers, 84,000 for the buyers. A bit of demand coming back, but it's really nowhere close to the 100,000 average that it should be. Also tied to fuels, so partly explaining the low fuel prices. Self-harmonizing power cores advanced to tied to structures, again confirming that trend that we are below average. Less than 2 million for the sellers, 1.8 million for one buyer, and then less than 1.8 million as well. Again, another one, if you want to grab some advanced PI materials, this would, in my opinion, be the time to do so from the buy orders. Superconductors, one of the exceptions. Test cultures is one as well that knew a very strong April here, up to 17,500 ISK. I produced this stuff and I actually managed to do quite a bit of selling on this period. Right now though, we're back to 10,000 ISK on the chart. 11,000 for the sellers, 9,400 for the buyers. This is where I'm stopping my selling, and I'm starting to hoard on my superconductors. 12k, 12,000, 11,750, 12,000 should be a doable average price for superconductors if we look at this chart, in my opinion. Next up, we have the test cultures that have that same April bump here, went up to 17,500 as well, and is now back to 11,500, 11,900 for the sellers. It looks like it's working on another leg up, almost 10k for the buyers. It's actually not bad at all if you look at this 1-year chart. So yeah, okay, test cultures, a little bit of a weird situation, must be tied to something that both of these go up like that. And then we've got the wetware mainframes that are actually the exception to most of these advanced PI materials, able to stay at around that 2.1 million, which is not that bad considering its average range, but right here at the tail end, last 24 hours, coming in below 2.1 million with, well, not that many of them, but they are selling aggressively, and the buyers are at 2 million or very quickly towards 1.9 million. So this could drop off sharply all of a sudden as well. All right, let me grab a drink and then we'll go to the next segment. Which is advanced move materials, coming in at 2310. Let's go. Advanced move materials. I wonder if the Nosik action will have an impact here. For now, crystalline carbonite had a little bit of volatility, managed to get to 170 on a couple of occasions, and is now slightly above average on its way back down a little bit. 160 for the sellers, 147 for the buyers. Decently narrow margin, not really much to say. This looks like it's normal, slightly above average price. We might see another bounce or something like that, but yeah, I can't really tie any in-game events to these trends right now. Ferrite carbide is continuing to go back down, now slightly below average. Still 144 for the sellers is not that bad. 136 for the buyers is also a narrow enough margin that I don't see this dropping off to like 125 anytime soon. So hopefully we see another little bounce from here to keep those average prices, but it looks to me like that should be doable. Titanium carbide is trending down, but let's also keep in mind that it's far more popular. It's all above 150, 161 for the sellers, and again 157.6 for the buyers. Decently narrow margin here, so a bit of pressure, but nothing too dramatic in my opinion. Tungsten carbide had this spike and is now recovering from that. We are talking 207 for the sellers, 190 for the buyers. Considering the rest of the prices in these carbide related items, this is not that bad at all. I'd say this is not the place where I want to jump in on any of these markets either. Perhaps if the pressure continues, we could do so. But for now, just looks like it's okay to produce, to sell, and to buy if you need it. Metamaterials front, let's see if there's a little bit of a difference here. Photonic metamaterials had a nice jump up in April, is recovering from that, but we're still talking 17,850 for the sellers, 16,870 for the buyers. Sure, that's a bit more margin, but this is also a price that's above average. A little bit, not that much anymore, but the gap will just keep closing, I think. Plasmonic metamaterials actually trading above average at this point, 23,000 for the sellers, 21,700 for the buyers. Well, definitely okay again to produce and to sell. And then we've got non-linear metamaterials that are actually taking off. Very interesting, going back to apparently an average price from the first part of the year here, 25,600 for the sellers, 24,000 for the buyers. But it's not like a massive breakout. You can in fact see on the daily averages that pressure is already here. So the market moves very quickly to take advantage of these types of moves. Same here with the terahertz metamaterials, went up to 25k. Sellers are back down to 23,000, 21,000 for the buyers. Narrow margin, slightly below average, but nothing too dramatic for the moment. On the other products, do we see anything different here? Fermionic condensates is dropping back off, and buyers are at 80,000 ISK, 85,000 for the sellers. If you look at this full 1 year chart, you could try to buy some of this, but we're nowhere near a wavy pattern like here, where we go from 110,000 down to less than 80k, so might still be a bit too early. Ferrogel is holding on to 40,000 ISK, apparently it's new normal. Fullerite had that spike, it's now recovering, but in my opinion not doing that badly. 1400 for the sellers, 1300 for the buyers. Buyers really being forced up here in Fullerite. If there's one that you bought for less than 1,000 ISK, which you could have done so not that long ago, it's a nice time to sell Fullerite. This is the one that had a little bit of volatility all of a sudden, like last week. Hypersynaptic fibers is still struggling. 11,770 for the sellers, 10,500 for the buyers, going down to 10,000 very quickly. Get that on the chart. It's at the low end, but we're not there yet for a true 1 year low point. Nanotransistors recovering from a spike, basically back at slightly below 6k. Yep, just below that for the sellers, just below that for the buyers as well. So not much to say. Phenolic composites very stable, right in the middle of the chart at 2000 ISK. And then these ceramic fibers continuing to struggle, but again we went to low points of close to 300 ISK. Right now 362 for the sellers, 355 for the buyers. Decently narrow margin, decent demand. No sign of any real depressions or anything like that in advanced moon materials. So if I were to look for speculative options, I would look into the Tech 2 ship market, and we're looking at that at 27.55. Let's go take a look at these. The Aries is finally dropping off below 30 million ISK here. 28.5 for the sellers, 25, almost 26 for the buyers. That's still a little bit too much in my opinion. So wait and see. Supply wise here, 273, that is going to hurt the Aries market substantially. So we could be in the beginning phase of another real downtrend. If we start to be substantially below 25 million on the buyers, it could be okay to make a move here. The Basilisk is finally stopping its ascent as well, stalling at around 230 million, 236 for the sellers, 212 for the buyers. So these are starting to lower their prices in my opinion. Nothing too crazy in the supply, in fact nothing in several days at this point for the Basilisk. Hopefully supply does come in. I think that is going to start to really put some more pressure on these prices. So I'm still on the lookout for this to be happening, but it looks like here is the Cerberus, went to 280, managed to stay there for about a week. Now we're finally dropping back below 250 million. Sellers are still at 274, but it's demand. Look at that, 204 million for the buyers that have dropped off here again. So any supply that's going to continue to add pressure here could help drag these buyers down that are already really low on the chart. It's not yet the time, in my opinion, to make a move on any of these, but it does look interesting. Crow confirming that trend so far. Started off at 33 million. We're now selling these for 28 million. You still see 320 of them coming in here. Another 36 here. Buyers are already below 25 million. Let's see if we can get that on the chart. Yeah, 25 million for a buying of a Crow. Quite a bit of supply coming in here as well. If you want to, you can try to grab one right now, but I personally am going to wait for the chart to confirm the trend to really go down to that 1 year low point, and hopefully we'll be able to snag something then. The Guardian, also a little bit of pressure, but not yet where I'd like to see this. On the lack of supply, still 262 million for the sellers, 221 for the buyers. Definitely too early to make a move here. The Hawk is recovering from its triple spike here, went up to 45 and even 50 million in the last 2 months or so. Any signs of oversupply? Let's take a look at that. Yeah, another 300 here, 37 million for the sellers, 30.6 million for the buyers. That's pretty low. Honestly, the Hawk, keep a very close eye on that one. This one could already be in a good place to try and grab a couple. The Heretic is continuing its slow downtrend, 62 for the sellers, 54 for the buyers. I managed to grab some of these at 52 million, so that's going to be my price that I would consider buying another one. Then we've got the Hound coming in, continuing to see that pressure here as well. We're now substantially below 30 million, landing on 25 million, which has been a takeoff point before. 26 million for the sellers, 24 million for the buyers, 662 ships coming in right here. That is going to keep things in check normally for at least a little bit of time. Will there be enough pressure here to take out 24 million and try to buy at 23 million? Maybe even that, try to buy below that price point. That is the real question now, but in my opinion, you're buying Hounds for less than 25 million. It does make sense if you need to move some cash into some potential investments. This chart looks really good and ready for that. It may still be a little bit too early, but in my opinion, you're not making a mistake by buying now. Ishtar is just confirming the trend, spiked up to 280, is going back down to 21 for the sellers, 207 for the buyers. Nothing too special in this supply though. It's mostly the frigates that are seeing hundreds of them that are putting pressure on the price. So be a little bit more careful in the cruiser segment, I would say. Manticore already bumping off of, what is this low point here? 26.5 million, a bit earlier than what I would have liked to see. 30 million. Oh, and actually buyers are down to 24 million. 30 million here. The one difference is we're not seeing 200-300 Manticores come to the market to keep things in check, but 24 million for the buyers, that is definitely not that bad. Still down here. So another stealth bomber that, in my opinion, if you want to be ready, you should try to grab one right now. Next up here we get the Munin, also confirming more pressure, going back down. 242 million for the sellers, 206 for the buyers. Could be a good purchase if the information that I read in one of the threads on the nullsec action is correct, that lots of Munins have been lost by one of the sides. But it remains very speculative, and a cruiser as well, although we are clearly below average, so I certainly wouldn't blame the purchase of one of them. Next up, the Nemesis, also confirming that pressure, landing on 25 million. We'd love to be well below that, and look at that, buyers at 22.2 million. Again, on not enough supply to say that this is going to be sustained or going even lower. So if you're looking for a jump in point, 22 million for the Nemesis seems pretty nice. Omniros staying flat above 200 million ISK, 215 for the sellers, 195 for the buyers. Yeah, volumes are not really that great. Let's see what the Purifier is doing, showing some pressure again, trading below 30 million in the last couple of days on average. 32 million for the sellers, less than 25 million for the buyers. Again, supply-wise, not as good as what the Hound, for instance, looks like. But that also does mean that this could be the right time to jump in if you can grab some below 25 million. Looking at this chart, it's definitely not bad, and it's possible right now. This would be my personal take on that. You know, it's pure speculation. I don't have like a crystal ball, or I'm not really a specialist or anything like that, but I would make a move on those that don't have the oversupply if you can still grab those. I mean, right now buying for less than 25 and selling at 32 should already be a bit of profit. Let's take a quick look at the player owned trade hubs. Nope, that's not where the action is, so it does make sense. And when it comes to those that do have those really massive numbers here, it may be a little bit too soon, but I may be wrong on that, and that may actually be here that you should put up your buy order, because they might never trigger in something like the Purifier. It's a difficult choice to make. The Saber is also trending down to 62.5 million, 63 for the sellers, 57 for the buyers. Alright, potentially you could do so, although I'm very hesitant on the interdictor markets. Then we get the Scimitar. Against the trend is actually going up in price. 280 million for the sellers, 210 for the buyers. Very massive margin opening up because of a lack of supply. So you could really sell a couple of Scimitars for a good price right now. And then the Zarmast is staying above 300 million. That's actually pretty impressive in the volume spike here as well. 364 for the sellers, 312 for the buyers. Really impressive margin opening up here as well. A bit of a trend that moves both the Zarmast and the Scimitar at the same time. Logistics cruisers, very interesting to see that move here in a Triglavian Tech 2 ship as well. We could perhaps start to hopefully see a real downtrend, then move in at the right time and sell these at a profit as well. So the Tech 2 ship market, some very speculative gambles to take in the stealth bombers, I would say, and then some ones that make a lot of sense, like the Hound with the massive volumes. The Hawk as well, I think, made a lot of sense. So alright, might be the right time for the Tech 2 frigates to make a move there. Next up, the Tech 3 ship market, coming in at 36.15. And let's take a look at that one. Here is the Confessor staying well above 40 million ISK, but definitely normalizing. 41.6 million for the sellers, 34 million for the buyers, and volume wise this is very reasonable. So it looks like this might just be the new normal for now. The Hecate is finally coming back down from that massive triple spike up to first 60 million, 70 million, and then eventually almost 90 million ISK. Managed to do 85 million on the 5-day moving average. Drops back below 50 million ISK. Should be on massive supplies. 48 million for the sellers, 42 million for the buyers, and it's not even that massive. We got 50 here, another 10 here, 21 here, so it's not that massive, although below 50 million it's already quite substantial in the amount of sell orders. So we're very quickly driving the price back down to a more normal rate. That's at least good news. The Jackdaw is also going back down less than 50 million by quite a bit. 45 million for the sellers, 39 for the buyers. Here we do have quite a bit of supply in the last couple of days as well, which is normal. These were far more expensive. And then the Zwepel is also staying above 40, but clearly going back down. 42 million for the sellers and 38 million for the buyers. I would say that here we are slowly absorbing these massive bubbles in all of them almost. Here is the Jackdaw bubble in February, Hecate massive bubble, April almost into May, and then in early April the Confessor had this spike as well up to 80 million ISK. Quite crazy moves. The Zwepel never broke out that massively, but it basically reaped the rewards, trading at 50 million for most of the month of April. Right now we're absorbing that. The good news on it, I would say, is that we're not seeing massive oversupply, so I would say that there's a good chance that we are just gonna land in that 40 million range again, and that the normal market forces will take over. On the other hand, a massive oversupply glut could create a massive buy opportunity as well. That may be a lost opportunity, but we'll see, of course. For now, I'm just seeing all the prices coming back together, supply-wise, nothing too crazy. So this is something that we have to keep an eye on. For the Legion, we're going back up a little bit. 163 for the sellers, 150 for the first buyer, 143 for most of them. And I bought one for 135 million. Could definitely take a little bit of profit on this one, but this was something that I now don't expect to happen. For instance, in the Hecate, the Jackdaw, all of these will stay well above those real low points. But here you can clearly see that we oversupplied too much, went well below 140, and that's where I decided to make a purchase. I don't see that happening in the destroyer market, but it clearly happened here in the cruiser market. Low-key though, I want to staying very clear from that. Is basically went up to 350 million ISK, super expensive, landing on 150, 178 for the sellers, 156 for the buyers. Basically it's more in its normal range. It's become very affordable, but it's not a 1 year low point, so that's not something I'd make a move on. The Proteus went pretty low, but not at the 130 mark, and is already back up. 171 for the sellers, 155 for the buyers. So that's another no. And then finally we've got the Tengu that's also staying above 180 on average. All those sellers are coming in. Okay, that's kind of weird that the chart is still saying 180 and sellers have come in, although most of them very recently, from 180 down to 173. So this is going to really go down quite a notch by next week. Buyers are at 151. That's not the low point yet either. So I really do think that I took advantage of the one very pronounced opportunity in the Legion here that went to 1 year low point, clearly broke the trend and was oversupplied on this downside, creating this opportunity. I'm not seeing it happening in any of the other Tech Tree ships, unfortunately. And then for the extra product, I think I checked it not that long ago, but someone made another request for mining ships, and you know, I definitely want to honor these requests. So mining ships coming in at 41 minutes, so pretty short one this week, but that's okay. So let's go take a look at these. We gotta get to ships and then mining barges first. I think we'll start with that. This should be, Retriever is tick 1. So here is the cover. The post said, well, with all this higher value of minerals, are we seeing like a real price move on these ships? Honestly, there's higher volumes that we are seeing, and the price basically went up because of the cost of production. Minerals went up as well. I do expect that it won't have that big of an impact, in the sense that I fully expect some or a decent amount of the player base to just have a mining character and a mining ship ready to take advantage of these higher mineral prices anyways. So the cover though, clearly up in volumes and up in price. 35 million right now, started the year at 20 million. Supply wise, I don't expect any real problems, especially in the Tech 1 segment. So high price, definitely more usage as well. Procurer up in volumes, but not as noticeable. Price wise though, exact same trend. Start below 15 million, it's now above 25 million, 26 million for the sellers, 23 million for the buyers. That's actually a pretty narrow margin. And then we get the Retriever that also has higher volumes, but nothing like too sustained in my opinion. And then we went up above 30 million. We're actually going back down a little bit. Again, double the price over the last year. 28 million now for the sellers, 25 for the buyers. Clearly an increased usage, also an increased production cost, has done really well for the prices of these Tech 1 ships, but the player base is willing to absorb these. It's also relative, right? 15 million, 30 million is actually very doable. Let's take a look at the Tech 2 ships next. Here is the Hulk chart, up for the year from 250 million up to 280 million. Volume wise, we're not seeing that move, and this could be like new players getting into these Tech 1 mining barges at first, but once you get into the Tech 2s, I would say that you're ready and that you have that character that can mine in a decently safe place anyway. So here we're not seeing that increase in volumes. We are seeing a slight increase in price, but that's still manageable. Machina is up from 200 million at the low point up to 280, probably because it has that right combination. It still has 2 mining lasers, so a decent yield, but also a much larger ore hold than the Hulk. For solo players, this one makes a lot of sense, but very noticeable. Slightly more consistent volumes, but nothing out of line either. And then the skiff market, really regular volumes, up in price as well, from 200 million and currently selling to 236 million. So on the mining barge front, I'm seeing mostly increased usage in the Tech 1 versions, and the Tech 2s have gone up in price as well, but it looks like that is pretty normal. And then we have a couple of capital ships left, of course, which is, let's see, well, I'm actually just gonna do the search on that. That's gonna be the easiest. So here is the Orca that has gone up in price from 600 million to 800 million ISK. Again, that is of course the mineral market that has increased the cost of producing these ships as well. Volume wise, there's definitely an uptick since the middle of the year, where in my opinion, I mean, probably due to what happened to the Rorqual. Rorqual nerfs made the Orca quite a bit more attractive, but for a lot of miners, I'm gonna say the high-sec miners, the Orca is already the end game ship. If you get there, you're not that likely to need a second one. You've got your pilot, you've got the ship ready. If you want to mine, or if you see the advantage of mining right now because of the higher prices, you're doing so without necessarily needing to buy a new Orca. At this point. And then I could take a look at the Rorqual, but from here we're probably not gonna get any really good views on that. Yeah, volume wise, this does mean that it's a very difficult chart to read. What do we see on the data? In low sec 10 jumps out 2 billion for the first seller, 2.1 billion for most, 2.1 billion for a buyer as well, but I don't think you can buy here. And then going down, 10 jumps out 1.6 billion for a buyer. Yeah, this is just too specialized a ship, I would say, to really be able to tell massive trends or anything like that. It's also super expensive because of its production cost itself, so even the nerfs have not really done that much for the Rorqual prices as far as I can see. I'm pretty sure in big alliances like the Imperium and others, when it comes to Rorqual pilots that do where you'll have a much healthier market, that you'll see an actual impact. For the neutral market, it looks like yeah, this is staying very insulated of problems like that. It's like trying to gauge the Titan prices in Jita or as a solo player. That's next to impossible. You gotta be in that alliance to be able to take advantage of the probable trends that are happening there at the moment. And that's going to be it for this EVE Talk, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.